make sure that I have the certification just in case.
Thank you.
My name is Alex MacDonald. I'm a charter school administrator, part of the administration team at North Star Charter School in Eagle. I am in the new NNU Charter Private School Leadership Program, started last year. And so the program kind of infuses a lot of the building administrator and the superintendency courses because you have to do so much, of each at a charter school. And so I'm finishing that up in June, which I'm excited about. I was involved with North Star's development of their new school building 2 years ago, working with mechanical systems. Helped out with some of the design elements, so it's fun to be part of the process. And I'm excited about this class because we're kind of things depreciate from here on out, so it's good to be able to keep an eye on those and get a better understanding of the budgeting process through the building.
Great. My background is I started out in science. I was going to be a veterinarian, and then went to C of I, and I was actually played basketball, and my basketball took more time than my science did, and so I switched and got a science and math degree, but in education. And so then I stayed there for 2 more years and got 2 bachelors, 2 masters, one in administration, one in counseling, and helped coach at there. Then I went and started teaching math at Melba. Got my math teaching underway, and then moved to Oakley and took a principal job and stayed there 2 years, and moved to the state of Washington and worked to WSU to get my doctorate. Then went to Kimberly and was superintendent for 7 years. Then I left education. I looked back on this and said, I was probably atypical that I did all this stuff and was too young. So in that area, Region 4, I started my superintendent job at 28 years old and was the youngest one in the state. And when I stayed 7 years at 35, I was still one of the younger ones, and everyone around me was retired. And so whenever they do activities, I had young children, and it just didn't work. So I left education and decided that I was going to leave the field of education. I went in to work with an architect firm doing planning for education, because my minor at WSU is facilities and planning. And so I stayed out 7 years and worked through 5 years with an architect firm, then left it, and another superintendent and I, Dave Teeter, which was in Filer, which is in northern Idaho now, started our own business. And we did planning for school facilities, and we did it in the western states. We went to Hawaii for 6 weeks. We went to Orlando, and we would take jobs there with the school districts assessing facilities, similar to what you will see on the BCEFs. The Orlando School District, interesting enough, was called Orange County. It was a huge district. They had more students in their entire school district than we have in the state of Idaho. That was a 6-week job, and there were 15 of us that assessed their buildings, and we were coming up with what it would cost them to upgrade their entire school district to good. So we were assigned so many schools, and it was really a challenge because, 1, traffic in Orlando is tough, but 2 is the schools are so spread out. And after I was there a couple weeks, I learned how to be smarter, and my schools were assigned, and I'd go right by one that I might have later in the week, and they were doing them alphabetical. So I looked and figured out how to do them geographically. And so by Thursday of the week, I was done for my last 4 weeks, and the rest of them were complaining. And I said, well, here's another thought process, but they gave us 3 schools a day to do, and you were on a dead run from 6 a.m. until about 11 p.m. Then you'd bring it back, and there's a large group of clerical people that would input that into data processing. And that was nice. After I did that for a while, my wife finally said, it'd be nice to have a husband that would help raise the children. So I got back into education, went to Marsing as superintendent, and then Milton here recruited me after 1 year in Marsing because they had building projects that they wanted to transact, and I jumped ship and moved over here, and I've been here 10 years. I have 3 or 4 more years before I can retire, but had a nice experience and gave me an opportunity that most soups don't have, and that is to leave the field, see what business people view, right or wrong, and then get a chance to say, you're going to make a business work and succeed due to your ventures on it, and part of what I did is help pass bonds. And interesting enough, we'll talk about that, but a lot of the districts would hire us and say the only way we'll hire you is if your bond passes, or we'll pay you, I should say, if your bond passes. So we got pretty explicit on what we expected from them, because if they did things wrong and failed, then it cost you your salary. So those were things, when I wrote that article and published that national article on a 10-step process, it was things that we used, gospelly. Every one of the 9 things had to be done, or we wouldn't take the job, because there was too high a probability they would fail. And today, Robin, we can talk about our facilities here, but we look upon the facilities in the Middleton School District and say we probably, for a 4A school district, have, one of the nicer facilities district-wide with all of our facilities, either new, upkept, or in Robin's case, hers a little older, but completely renovated with technology in line. And today when we tour, I'm going to let you ask me all the questions you want to ask, but then when I go through different areas, what I want you to do is to see, and I'll point those out. We had the good fortunes of taking a prototypical plan, which was Caldwell and also Valley View. We hired the architects based upon what they designed, which is interesting. Most times you hire architects and say, throw out what we want. We interviewed, 8 different firms that did education facilities, and then our committee looked at it and said, the buildings of Valley View and Caldwell are the 2 that we like best. And so we used Caldwell as a footprint and said to the architects, okay, we want you to redraw it under our specifications, but that way our teachers that toured through there knew what it looked like to start with. The public, when we passed our bond, knew what we were looking to gauge it on, and it gave us a real good starting point. But as you know, when Superintendent of Instruction Ann Fox was there, she wanted to do buildings that were all the same, and this is a good example why that wouldn't be good for us. So when I tour you through here, I'll go through areas and say, here's something we learned, and we went through all 17 of the biggest high schools around, and we spent days in those saying, tell us what is good about your facility and what you wouldn't want done again. And then we asked the architects, our architects, to do critiques of that and say, are these things reasonable, what the teachers and administrators want or not? And so we implemented probably over 24 of those items, and there were changes into Caldwell's plan, and then we went through Caldwell with fine-tooth comb and said, what works, what doesn't work? And they gave us real good feedback. My wife works for the Caldwell School District at Caldwell High as a bookkeeper. So she gave me all kinds of input on things that the administrative office and the counseling office didn't work, and things that worked well. And so I listened to her input, everything from, and you'll see this, they don't have any access to have students and teachers bring money in without going through the main office into her office, which creates problems for the principals and everyone else. And so we redesigned our area, and you'll see that as one of the 17 areas that we changed, that they have outside windows to where the bookkeeper has a roll-up door to her office, and the registrar has one, the secretaries have one, the counseling secretary has one, all different than what Caldwell has. And then we'll go through, and as we walk through here, I'll say, this is what I learned where, this is what they didn't like. And I don't ever want you to think that we're bad-mouthing someone else's schools. That's not our intent. Valley View, for instance, we learned that they have a gym auditorium combo, and we like that better rather than Caldwell putting an auditorium on one end and a gym on the other because of parking and access to it. So we used Valley View's plan, but Valley View didn't like that plan because they can't keep them out of their auditorium. When something occurs right there, they go into the gym. So their athletic director and principal says this is not good. So we listened to that and said, okay, to our architects, design this. So you'll find in our school we have their own foyer. We use a Caldwell foyer with our auditorium, but we stack them together, so we got the best of 2 worlds. When an auditorium play occurs, then the doors are open if there's no activity in the gym, or shut if there is one, so that the foyer there, we used the Valley View plan where they have the big lunchroom, is bridging both facilities. Just one of the many things. And then everything from in the classrooms, we heard